In this video we're going to look at stem cells and what they are and where they come from and why scientists are so interested in them. But to help us understand, let's just take a scenario of a man and woman and they are trying to have a baby. Now in that scenario, at some point, if successful, we're going to have a sperm cell meeting an egg cell, and what happens there is we get the 23 chromosomes from the mother joining the 23 chromosomes from the sperm cell from the father, and that will produce a fertilized egg. So that process is called fertilization. And what happens after that, after the egg's been fertilized, is we get the cell, which will then divide into 2, 4, and then after about 5 or 6 days it will be a ball of cells that looks a little something like that. That ball of cells will then go on to produce all the different cells needed to make a new human. So we've got some nerve cells over here, this is a white blood cell, an epithelial cell, muscle cells, and so on and so forth. Each one of those cells will then go on to produce tissues. Those tissues will produce organs, then organ systems, and then you'll end up with a brand new baby which has all the different types of cells it needs to survive. Now that's what happens in the normal cycle of things, but what scientists are really interested in is this ball of cells over here. This ball of cells appears after about 5 or 6 days. After 5 or 6 days, and when it becomes all the different types of cells that it needs, this is no longer there. And the reason why this is so interesting is because these cells, called stem cells, can actually have the potential to become any other type of cell in the body. These muscle cells can't become epithelial cells or nerve cells. These white blood cells can't become muscle cells. Once they have become the type of cell they are going to be, when they reproduce, they can only reproduce into their own kinds of cells, and that can be used for growth and it can be used for repair and replacement, but they can't actually become any other type of cells. But these stem cells can. And we're going to look at a little bit more detail about these stem cells. So those cells are actually called, those stem cells are actually called embryonic stem cells because they come from embryos. We can get stem cells from other places, for example bone marrow in humans, amniotic fluid, are a couple of other areas where you can get these stem cells, but the embryonic ones seem to be the ones that are most able to turn into other types of cells that might be needed. As we said, they are unspecialized or undifferentiated, so that's a couple of important key words, which just basically means they are not actually the type of cells they need to be just yet, but they do have the potential to do that. The problem, however, is where do we get these embryonic stem cells from? We can't just take a pregnant mother after 5 days of being pregnant, take these cells out and then start experimenting on them, but there is a possible source of these cells that comes from somewhere else. If you remember back to Unit 1, we talked about this process called IVF treatment, in vitro fertilization, and this is a process that helps couples who can't have children to actually have children. What happens in this scenario here is we have some egg cells and sperm cells that are mixed in a petri dish. The sperm cells fertilize the eggs and they become several embryos. Now we don't put all of those embryos back into the mother. We do put 1, maybe 2 back into the mother so that she can go on to become pregnant, but we do have several embryos that are actually not used to put back into the mother. And what happens with those is they are either stored for a while, or in fact they are sometimes just discarded, just thrown away. Now what scientists are saying is, well, if these are just going to be thrown away, why can't we then take those, because they're not going to actually develop into humans anyway, why can't we take each one of those cells out and carry out some medical research, some experiments to see if we can make them become the type of cells we want. So if I could take this cell and make it into some nerve cells that could repair spinal cord, that would be fantastic. If I could take this cell and make it into the types of cell I need to produce a new heart, well, we can have heart transplants and so on. And some of the uses for these are to treat a disease called Parkinson's disease. There is spinal cord injuries that could be treated. So if you've damaged a spinal cord or your spinal cord and have become paralyzed, these cells might actually help to make new tissue that would repair the spinal cord. You could, as mentioned just now, maybe make some new organs. And there's another type of disease called type 1 diabetes which could benefit from this kind of research. So that's what scientists are saying. Why can't we take these cells, experiment on them, and help to cure all these diseases that are causing such suffering with individuals and with people? Now, when thinking about that, we have to think about the social issues and the ethical issues, and you have to be aware of what those are. You are obviously going to have your own beliefs about this, but you do have to have an understanding of what the beliefs are on one side and on the other side. Now, in terms of the social issues, we can save lives, we can cure diseases, we can save costs, so treating people who have certain diseases won't need to have ongoing treatment because they no longer have the disease, and these are some of the social issues. So this will make people's lives better, and it will have a big impact on society. On the other side of things, we have ethical issues, and these are to do with whether something is right or wrong. And the ethical issues are, well, are we killing humans? What some people would say is, well, hold on a minute, this embryo here, if it was allowed to continue to grow, would actually become a human being. And at what point do we say, well, it is a human being? And some people believe, actually, well, this is a human being because it's an embryo and it could become a new person, and we have no right to interfere with that process, and that often comes from religious views. So to summarize these 2 points of view, I've got quotes from 2 different groups. On one side, we've got research involving humans, or human stem cells promises new treatments for diseases as mentioned, and you can read that for yourself. On the other side of things, a pro-life movement believes that embryonic stem cell research violates the sanctity of life, and some people even go to the point of thinking it's practically murder, and they don't believe that you should be allowed to work on these stem cells. Now, what you should be able to do is to give points of view from both sides. You should be able to talk about social issues and ethical issues as well. You should be aware of what embryonic stem cells are, where they come from, and what the issues are in terms of using them for medical research.